Now that a little bit of time has passed since the initial reveal of Dragon Age the Veilguard, people are starting to really form their opinions on how they're feeling about this game. It was a little tricky because the initial reveal was just so bad, that Marvel Fortnite-y sort of intro of the characters. It was difficult to look at the gameplay reveal and just be totally unbiased, not sort of think, I am expecting crap, I'm not really expecting anything less. But the dust has kind of settled, and the general sort of feel is the game's just mediocre. The big thing I've been thinking about is, what does the Veilguard actually excel at? What is it doing to separate itself maybe from other RPGs? What does it do better? Because if you think of recent games, Baldur's Gate 3, it obviously had a lot going on in the choice and consequence department. It really pushed that. It's a massive reason for the success. I mean, even the bear sex stuff, even though it seems a little bit weird, I don't think it was actually about intimacy with a bear. It was about, you can literally do anything you want. And the marketing around that real push, I think it helped the game. If you think of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it was all about, you've got this historical setting and the realism, almost the simulation of that medieval setting. It's just not something you're going to get from another game, and it helps that title sort of stand out. Even Assassin's Creed Shadows, I don't care for Assassin's Creed these days, but you do have a unique kind of setting for, they call it an RPG, I guess we can call it that. If we're being honest, it's got more unique stuff going for it than the Veilguard, that ancient Japanese setting. You don't really see that a lot in role-playing games, so it's a point of difference at the very least. The Veilguard doesn't really have anything like that going for it. The combat, it looks bog average. It seems like no one was actually passionate about action combat. It was just trying to appeal to the masses, to dumb it down, essentially. The setting is pretty standard sword and sorcery. There's nothing unique about it. And if we think of the characters, the dialogue, the writing, this is no Disco Elysium. It's definitely not a huge strength of the game. And the way I see it, the selling point of Dragon Age the Veilguard, it's basically just trying to appeal to people who just want to see the Dragon Age story continue. They're already invested in the IP, they maybe played Inquisition, the DLCs for that title, and they want to see a continuation of that. Maybe even an ending if they wrap some of that stuff up. The whole thing's odd to me, because if you're truly just trying to appeal to existing fans, what is the point of dumbing down all the systems? There's less companions that you can play with, the action combat, there's no tactics. If you're trying to appeal to new people and you've got no hook, no point of difference, what are you really doing? It's just made me kind of realize that BioWare are living in the past, because back in the days of Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect 1, 2, they didn't really have a whole lot of mainstream competition. So anything they did seemed decent because RPG fans were starved. They were looking for anything. If you think of even just a few years ago when the Outer Worlds came out, a lot of people were super enthusiastic because there was very little else happening. There was Witcher 3 a few years before that, but not a whole lot else really going on. But since then, we've had Baldur's Gate 3, Kingdom Come Deliverance, we get a lot of indie RPGs, that seems to be a big thing, and the success of Baldur's Gate will probably mean more CRPG types of games will get greenlit. We're not in a world anymore where BioWare are by themselves. They have to produce something that people are actually interested in. They're not going to buy something purely because it says Dragon Age on it. I mean, it's not an IP held in really high esteem. It's had a lot of crap entries. So BioWare seemed like they were coasting. They thought they'd get away with just a 7 out of 10 game. It's not going to happen in 2024. They need to do better because the fan reaction, at very best, it's split 50-50. And I think that's generous. You look at the gameplay reveal trailer, not quite as bad with the like and dislike ratio as the initial reveal with the characters, which was embarrassing, but there are still more dislikes than likes on the gameplay reveal, which is pretty troubling because you would think that BioWare needed a real big success here with the Veilguard. They can't just produce something all right. They need big sales I believe, for EA to keep them around. EA have closed studios who've made far less mistakes. Westwood, who made all the old Command & Conquers, they got closed very quickly when EA felt they weren't financially viable anymore because strategy wasn't big in the mainstream. BioWare have made tons of fuck-ups for like the last 10, 15 years. They're still around. Can they afford one more? I don't really think so. Now, what seems to be happening, because the situation with BioWare feels pretty dicey, that if they make another mistake here, if Dragon Age doesn't sell, it could be the end, there's a lot of coping fans who can't seem to handle the criticism. And I believe being critical of this is important for the RPG genre, because I want to see the quality continue to rise. I don't want to see the Baldur's Gates and so on be a one-off, and then we just go back to generic slot being viable, which the industry has tried to do. We saw all those articles about, don't expect Baldur's Gate 3 to be the gold standard. It's not realistic. We need to go back to dumbing down RPGs because we suck at our job and that's about all we're capable of. I really think it's much better for the RPG drama that we show the industry we're not going to tolerate mediocre rubbish, and if that results in the end of Dragon Age, the end of BioWare, so be it. I want to see superior developers these days have the confidence that if they make a great game, that is what's going to sell. Don't dumb it down trying to appeal to mainstream audiences. Baldur's Gate, Elden Ring, and so on, they show if you make a quality game where you treat the audience with some intelligence, they will buy it. And they will embrace that, and they will get into all of that content. But despite all of that, you get these fans, these copers, who basically think we should just give BioWare a free pass because Dragon Age is back, baby. Who cares about the quality? Just consume, just play it, part with your $70 because this is Dragon Age and we should support BioWare because, if we don't, they could die out. I don't care about BioWare anymore. They're a shell of their former selves. I don't owe them anything. We as fans don't owe them anything. They need to produce something of quality. And the criticism, maybe it's too late for them to fix the game, but I think it's better that they hear it now. The only chance of anything improving is if they hear this criticism now. So I think people should continue to voice that opinion. And these copers that are out there, the arguments that they use, it's never about actually defending the game itself. It's finding outside reasons to blame the person giving the criticism and acting like they're the problem. It's not the game, it's other factors. And if I'm being fair, most places where there's online discourse, I'm finding that the feedback's pretty objective. Most people, again, they find the game to be pretty average from everything they've seen. They're discussing it objectively. They're not sort of blind fanboying. The Dragon Age Reddit is a different story, though, and there's unbelievable levels of cope going on here. For instance, this person. This is how they view the criticism. They say, there is a huge difference between voicing valid criticisms and blowing every little thing out of proportion. There is a huge difference between voicing valid criticisms and blowing every little thing out of proportion. Because it's in to hate BioWare games. So just immediately disregarding any criticism. It's just people are doing it because it's trendy to hate BioWare. There's nothing trendy about BioWare. No one cares about them anymore. They haven't released a good game in 15 years. No one really gives a toss. I've seen a lot of complaints that boil down to, the game is woke. Black and Asian elves, pansexual characters. That's the only reason people hate the game. And this is a big one I'm seeing. Anyone defending Dragon Age, they're claiming, everyone who's doing it, they're a culture war tourist. They're just jumping on board to hate it because DEI and they're obsessed with woke and all of that sort of crap. Well, I'll say this first. There is actually some truth to that. The reason people have this concern, unlike what this person says, people hate the game because there's a black character or there's an Asian character. What it's about is you have, first of all, the game director who describes themselves as a queero gendermancer or something like that, literally said in an interview that they understand and are better at making games because they're a trans person, something to that effect, which sounds condescending. It's pretty ridiculous. But you just get that feeling. You see it in the game, you see it from their staff members, that their priority is not just making the best Dragon Age possible. It's, we've got these political beliefs, we're going to cram them into the game, and if people don't agree with those beliefs, We're going to call them out as a bad person inside the game. We're going to talk down to them. All of this sort of crap that no one wants to hear about. So when it's affecting the game, your real 2024 political views, that's not what anyone wants and wants to spend their money on. So it's a valid criticism, but unfortunately people will just water that down and say, oh, you must hate black people or something like that. And if you try and have a nuanced conversation, they won't hear it. They'll just call you a racist, a phobe, or whatever. But it is a true concern. This game looks like Fortnite. No, it doesn't. So apparently because this individual does not think it looks like Fortnite, it disregards the whole argument. Even though you've got 100+ dislikes on YouTube, many people, they're disliking it because of that art style, because it looks Marvel-esque, Fortnite-esque. No, it doesn't matter. One person says it's not, so it just can't be true. The dialogue is similar to Marvel movies. Literally where, lol? We haven't even heard that much dialogue. When people talk about Marvel dialogue, it's where the writing, the dialogue itself, it almost takes you out of the setting. You don't feel these characters are believable anymore. They're talking in a way to ensure that it can appeal to the lowest common denominator. I'm sure many people know what I'm talking about, but pretending that this isn't a thing, I feel like it's disingenuous. So again, you say you don't care about it, so apparently it's not a problem. The game doesn't feel like Dragon Age, which is subjective because for me, it felt like Dragon Age. Well, again, subjective, many people don't feel it does. And those concerns are valid. And one of the problems is that Dragon Age has an identity problem. They've changed the game so much between Origins and Inquisition. The truth is they're never going to make absolutely everyone happy, but that's their own fault for changing things too much. If you wanted to make different types of fantasy games, you should have made different series. You could have had an MMO-like series, Inquisition, where you've got big open worlds and action combat, and you still could have had a series like Dragon Age Origins, where it's tactical combat. And the game itself, it is a bit more linear. It is a little bit more mission-based, which is what they're doing, apparently, with Veilguard now. But then they've got the action combat, so it just feels like a bit of a mess. The companions are ugly, ? Well, years of market research have revealed that people want to see attractive characters in their movies, in their games. They don't want to see people that resemble terminally online purple-haired Twitter users. They've had enough of that. So to act like, again, that's not a concern. He even says, now tell me, why should I take these people seriously? Any of these concerns, they're valid, and even if you don't agree, they are relevant to BioWare. Because if this game does not sell, it's probably the end for them. And if enough people agree with these problems, you're not talking about one or two people that you're calling out and you're whinging about. A lot of people agree with these criticisms. Many of them won't buy the game. I won't say all. Unfortunately, too many people will be critical and then they'll just buy the game day one anyway and pretend that they're not playing it. A bit like that Modern Warfare 2 boycott all those years ago on Steam, where everyone was actually still playing it day one despite saying they weren't going to buy it. And what actually happens is if the online discourse for this game is really, really negative, it is going to filter through to the general public, to the normies. And a lot of people will say, no, it's only online nerds and we're going to watch 10 videos about the Veilguard. That's probably true, but it still filters through because just some normie, some average gamer, they still browse social media and they're eventually going to come across a post that is shitting on the game, or they're going to speak to a friend that's bad-mouthing the game and says, don't buy that Dragon Age game, forget it, people are saying that it's crap. These people, they won't actually look into the reasons why either. They'll just hear about the game being crap and they won't buy it. And the proof in that is that it goes both ways. Like, again, Baldur's Gate 3, so many people were talking positively that it sold 20+ million copies. Do you think what was meant to be a niche CRPG would have sold that well if it wasn't for that extremely positive word of mouth? It is showing in gaming now. Deceptive marketing's no longer going to work as well because too many people have been burned. You're not going to get away with some dramatic Marvel-esque trailer like they tried to do with Dragon Age and think that's going to work. It's not. People now want to see what they're actually going to be getting and they're going to be playing, not just a fancy set piece, a 2-minute CGI trailer. There's more that goes into it now to actually sell a game. And this clown ends by saying, the only criticism I have is that we can only take 2 companions with us. But that's such a small thing, and I've waited 10 years. So at this point, I really don't care. This is the mindset. So a genuine criticism that this person even believes and even agrees with, but they'll just disregard it completely because, oh, we've waited 10 years, I'm too excited for Dragon Age. This is how we end up with garbage, when you accept mediocre design because you're fanboying for an IP, just the game name itself and not actually any of the substance. Now, another one, and this other person brought it up too, but I thought I'd wait for this, because a lot of people are implying that you're not a real Dragon Age fan, you can't have an opinion if the only title you like is Origins. And they asked the question, this poster, do you like the Dragon Age franchise, or did you just like Origins? I think that's totally fine. If you only liked Origins, and I'd probably put myself in that camp, I think Dragon Age Origins, it was a decent follow-up spiritual successor to the Baldur's Gate series. It had that tactical combat. It came out at a time where there weren't a lot of other mainstream RPGs, so I'll give respect to BioWare for that. Back in their peak, at least around that time, they were doing something that most other developers wouldn't do. They were all moving on to action games, which BioWare eventually has done. But back then, Origins was its own thing. Pretty good game. Unfortunately, Dragon Age 2 was a very rushed follow-up. It was extremely lazy. It was more action-orientated as well. And then Inquisition, which I believe had its own development problems. I believe it actually was going to be an online Dragon Age, and then they pivoted to making a single player, which has actually happened with the Veilguard, which was meant to be a live service, and then they pivoted to single player. So this has now happened twice. But Inquisition, it felt like an MMO light. People were put to sleep halfway through doing the hinterlands, the first area. They'd had enough. So Dragon Age has had that identity problem. There's 3 major entries, 2 of them are questionable, if not crap to many people. And it just seems like those who loved every entry, they really only like the story. They'll barely actually defend the gameplay of Inquisition and 2. But then they act like, I love every game. And you have to love every game to be a true Dragon Age fan. If you only like Origins, what are you doing? But the real essence of their argument is they think that because Dragon Age has moved more and more action with every entry, that it's only natural that the Veilguard is an ARPG. Dragon Age is now an action RPG series. And if you don't like that, it means you're not an RPG fan. And even if you think Origins, the tactical combat, that was the only time where Dragon Age was good, it's not valid to suggest that they go back to that. It's total nonsense because, again, 2 Inquisition development problems, the industry has now changed. If they were chasing trends then with action combat, 10 years later, they should know they don't have to do that because we've had the Baldur's Gates and so on successful with tactical combat. Lots of indie RPGs have done very well with even turn-based combat. So there was little reason why they couldn't at least consider going back to tactical. Now, BioWare, they don't have to do that. They decided to go in the complete opposite direction, but fans have every right to criticize it. So to suggest that you're not a Dragon Age fan unless you love every entry, it's ludicrous, and there would literally be 0 Star Wars fans if we use that logic. Anyway, I just wanted to show some of these bad faith arguments that are doing the rounds, and if you are someone who is critical of the Veilguard, you've got every right to be. It's better that you make your voice heard and you speak your mind, because otherwise things won't improve. You'll just keep getting the same crap over and over that these people will probably continue to buy. So we'll see if in a month's time, let's say, BioWare show more of the game and it's actually good. I'm open to changing my opinion, but it's not looking too good so far. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.